Okay, so I'm Monique Lewis Hawkins. I work for an organization called Equal Opportunity Support Services. I'm the executive director, and we provide support to people that have special needs, okay? I've been in the field working with individuals with developmental and intellectual disabilities for over 30 years, and I've worked in a variety of positions. I worked in direct care staff, all the way up to management. Thank you. So, again, hopefully today will leave you with a wealth of information. Okay, so the way we think about support for people transitioning into adulthood is maybe because around this time people are gathering for dinner, they're preparing their meals, and what usually makes the meal successful is following a recipe. When you have your favorite recipe that you follow, it has all of the different ingredients that you use, the right measurements, and everything put together ends up to be a successful dish. So today, we're going to put together all the components and try to develop a recipe for success as we transition into adult services. Now, first, let's start out by understanding the adult service system. Everyone here is under the school care system, and some of the words I'm using is just layman's terms as not to confuse everyone, okay, or anyone. Now, in the school system, the state and the school are required to provide you with certain services. So, for example, if you need occupational therapy or physical therapy, you're entitled to receive those services. When you transition into adult services, you're no longer entitled to any services. The state is no longer responsible for taking care of you, okay? You have to qualify for services. Qualifying for services means filling out the application, so it's not automatic where anything rolls over. And not only that, but there's certain criteria that you have to follow to maintain your status and qualifications, okay? A person must be eligible for DDD services. Now, who qualifies for DDD services in New Jersey? For functional criteria, the definitions to meet and qualify for DDD services as an adult or child, you must have a chronic developmental disability, which can be physical and or intellectual, that manifested prior to the age of 22 and is a lifelong condition. Some of these intellectual and developmental disabilities defined are diagnoses such as autism, certain behavior disorders, brain injuries, cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, fetal alcohol syndrome, intellectual disability, of course, and spina bifida. The reason why this is important is because sometimes we have parents that reach out to us, and we have school administrators that reach out to us as well. And the assumption is just because a person has an IEP in the school that they're automatically qualified for services with DDD, and that's actually not true, okay? A person can have an IEP for some type of behavioral challenges that they may be experiencing. They may have an IEP for some areas that they may be deficient in, but specifically to qualify for services with DDD, you must have an intellectual or developmental disability. Some people confuse that with certain type of diagnosis for mental illness. So just because a person has a mental illness or a mental illness diagnosis does not automatically mean that they qualify for services for DDD, okay? We don't discourage anyone from applying. You should apply. Let DDD make that final determination, but just so you're on track, you should have an intellectual or developmental diagnosis to qualify for DDD, okay? For a mental illness doesn't typically interfere with cognitive abilities, whereas a developmental disorder may impact a person's ability to learn or understand certain thoughts. So you can tell the difference. Okay. So when you're getting ready to graduate from the school system, there are certain steps that you have to follow in order to apply for DDD services, and we're actually going to go through each step, okay? The first step is to apply for Medicaid eligibility, all right? All of the services that DDD pays for is paid for through Medicaid, so you must have active Medicaid, and you must also maintain Medicaid in order to be qualified for DDD services, okay? Sure.
So does that mean if, say, perhaps my son and I were underneath state insurance, he already qualifies?
Yeah, he has state Medicaid?
Yes, we both have state.
Yeah, well, it doesn't mean that he qualifies for
Okay.
DDD, but he's met one of the criteria for DDD, which is having Medicaid.
Okay.
If you have Social Security and Medicaid are funded by the same sources. Hi, how are you? Social Security and Medicaid are funded by the same sources. So if you are approved and eligible for Social Security and you have Medicaid, then that meets that one specific criteria. Okay? All right, good. The second step is to apply for DDD eligibility. After you apply for Medicaid, then you complete the Njcat, which we're going to talk about. Then you complete what's called the agency selection form. Okay? So let's talk about step one in the process, applying for Medicaid. You can apply for Medicaid on the government's website, and you can literally Google NJ Family Care or New Jersey Medicaid. If you reach out to us, we have applications, and there may be, did we put that Medicaid application? It may actually be an application for, the application right here for Medicaid. Can I just hold this up? Here's the copy of the application for Medicaid as well. If you haven't certified, thank you. For Medicaid, and if you are not comfortable with going online, you can also go in to your local county welfare office and apply for Medicaid as well. If you have issues regarding applying for Medicaid, this website here, the Medi-Edge Help Desk, that's connected through the Department of Human Services, and there are people here that will help you to troubleshoot any issues that you may be experiencing. The only thing that we kind of warn or try to inform parents about is when you go on a website, just make sure the website ends in .gov, because there's so many websites out there, as you know, that's trying to get your information. So make sure when you're applying on a website, if you do, it ends at .gov and it's official website. Okay? Okay, now to go to step two. Once you've applied for Medicaid and you are approved for Medicaid, we don't discourage people from applying around the same time, because DDD is a process, it takes a long time. So you don't necessarily have to wait for approval. Just as long as you have your application in, DDD will move forward with your DDD application. To apply for DDD services, and in the packet, you also have a copy of the DDD paper application as well. You can also literally Google New Jersey DDD application. It will come up. They do have the ability to submit your application online, but most of the families find it easier to submit the paper application. Because if you look at the application, a big part of the application is supplying documentation, okay? Not just the first couple of pages is general information, but it's accumulated documentation, and people may have a difficult time submitting that information online, okay? If you have difficulty, here are all of the DDD main offices for the counties, so you can reach out to the main office and get assistance. We at Equal Opportunity, we help parents, we work with you well before you're qualified to answer any questions regarding the application process. We steer you in the direction for Medicaid, because sometimes there's people or families that just get stuck and it prevents them from moving forward, and they have simple questions. Like the most common question is on the application, it asks for documentation of the diagnosis. Can anyone think of different ways that you could accumulate documentation, or what documentation do you think you could present as part of your DDD application?
Well, when my son was originally diagnosed, he was diagnosed before he went into preschool.
Okay.
They sent me through Washington County District to a neurologist to have him diagnosed.
Okay.
So I could go back through the school district to actually find that information for him.
Excellent. Perfect. A neurologist, you can have an evaluation from a neurologist. The school is an excellent resource for documentation regarding the diagnosis. Can anyone think of any place else you could get a diagnosis? No?
Probably your primary doctor.
Perfect.
Pediatrician.
That's what we say. Tell your doctor to write it on the script. DDD will take it, you know?
Can I ask you one question?
Sure.
What she mentioned about the neurologist,
Mhm.
our daughter has a neurologist also that we see. I think I was told they have to be, a visit has to be done within a certain amount of time there when you apply. Is that correct?
Not generally.
Maybe one like within that year or in 6 months or something, or am I wrong with that?
Okay, so each DDD will make their assessment, but as a general rule, I've seen DDD take whatever documentation that they have, because in a perfect world, in an imperfect world, we don't always accumulate and have documentation. So sometimes if the documentation is older, they will accept, all kinds of various documentation. And that's the biggest hurdle that people face, is just getting simply documentation of the diagnosis. We also make referrals to psychiatrists, psychologists, I always get them confused, to have evaluations done as well. So if you don't have documentation and you're looking for a doctor, we can steer you in the direction of a doctor that does that. But you had it perfectly. Just ask your doctor to write it on the script, and any documentation that you have, you could accumulate, just put it all together. And I'm not even kidding. I had one mom who we've met, and we help people because not only does sometimes the person or the high school student have special needs, sometimes the parents need a little bit of help as well. So we met someone and we trekked out to Trenton. We met in the library and she showed up with I don't know if anyone shops at Aldi's. The size of the bags are not regular size bags. Aldi bags are like this big. So she shows up with 2 Aldi size bags. It's like, you said you wanted documentation. I'm like, okay, so how are we gonna mail this? So what we did was we started out with the most recent documentation. I said, listen, let's just start off with the base and let's just add stuff in as they ask for it. So anytime you need documentation, anything you have is better than nothing. And DDD, I think they're very understanding. I think that sometimes people have the perception of DDD as someone sitting behind a desk with a stamper that says denied, denied, denied. I haven't really experienced that. There probably is really one that takes, pride in that, but they're really good who work with families and so on and so forth, okay? So to apply for DDD,
So our local office is there in Voorhees.
Okay.
So, and the gentleman that is my contact person is Joe Heller.
okay,
So I don't know if you are familiar with him or have worked with him in the past, but so that just for the families here, that's kind of who we deal with
Okay.
when we make an application to them.
thank you so much.
Yep.
Okay, and just one more thing before I forget. If you have a student or a child that is already receiving DDD services through the school system or the before care, there's a short application for you to fill out. You don't have to fill out the long application, okay?
You had mentioned that once they get out of school, they're no longer entitled, you have to qualify.
Yes.
So based on qualifying, what are some criteria that you have to qualify for? Does that mean that you have to, per se, have experience, or like why would they choose this kid to have, I don't know, a support aide as opposed to somebody else?
Okay, good. So you have an excellent question. What I think you're talking about are the services that DDD provides, and we're going to talk a little bit about the services. But to actually qualify, one of the qualifications is to have an intellectual or developmental disability. That's the key qualification. One other qualification, which I was kind of really surprised at, is you actually have to be a U.S. citizen to receive benefits. that shocked me. I was like, there's no way they're gonna deny people. They were like, yeah, they do. I was like, oh, okay. So you have to be a U.S. citizen, and you have to have an intellectual or developmental disability. I think I bring up qualifying for services is because, and I'm assuming we're not talking to any of the parents here, but there's some parents that are very, very used to in the school system having wonderful staff do everything for them. And I just kind of want to say, when you graduate from school, no one's going to do that anymore. So that's why I say qualified, because they think that once the student graduates, someone's going to knock on the door and say, hey, we're DDD and you have to get these services. No. Once they graduate and turn 21, no one, well, we will, but no one else will knock on your door and say, hey, you need to do these things. And it's really about just taking initiative, because your support system within the school, we still have schools that work with the parents, which are really good, but your support system within the school is not going to be there, so you have to take ownership of this process. That's what it's really about when we talk about it's not entitlement, it's you have to qualify, because if DDD asks you for something and you don't supply it, no one's going to follow up with you. You have to do that on your own. Okay.
And they can apply to Medicaid sooner than DDD, correct?
Absolutely.
So, and people probably should do that. Correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
There's no wait period for that. You can apply for Medicaid, then proceed with the application for DDD.
And what age would you suggest to start this process? Because they don't get services until they're 21. Should they start at age 20? Should they start at age 19? Like, what would be the best time for parents to really start filing applications or gathering information?
Okay, DD, there is a timeline in there, but between 18 and 19, I say get started, because sometimes there's just wait for everything. You have to wait to get to doctor, you have to wait to get this. So you want to make sure you have things in place before the person graduates or turns 21. So the earlier, the better. 18 or 19 years old, I think I heard someone 18 or 19 in this, oh, did you say that, sir? You have a child? How old is your child?
Me? She's 20.
Okay, good. Perfect timing, okay? And we're actually at the end going to talk a little bit about the schedule for application, okay? Now, so step one is, what's step one? Apply for Medicaid, good. Step one. What's step two?
Apply for DDD.
You got it, apply for DDD, good. Step three is to complete what's called the Njcat, okay? This is called the Njcat. The Njcat is the assessment that basically drives the services that you may be eligible for through DDD, and the Njcat also drives the budget as well, okay? So once you apply for Medicaid, you apply for DDD services, they're like, great, you're qualified, then they're gonna call you to schedule the Njcat assessment. The Njcat assessment is broken down into 3 categories: medical, behavioral, and then self-care, okay? Njcat is medical, behavioral, or self-care. In each category, a person can get a score from 1 up until 4, 1 being the lowest and 4 being the highest, okay? So in each of these categories, once you get your score, they combine the 3 scores and they give you what's called a tier, okay? A tier goes from a tier A all the way up to a tier E. An A is the lowest tier and an E is the highest tier. In very, very rare circumstances, I think throughout the state there's maybe 2 or 3 people, you can have an F, but you know. So you can have a tier from an A to an E, and then there's also something called an acuity. An acuity means that there's a higher level of clinical need for a person. So someone that maybe has a tracheotomy or they have a feeding tube, they may be eligible for a medical acuity. Someone who may have challenging behaviors can be qualified for behavioral acuity, and that's self-care as well, toileting, so on and so forth, okay? And it's important when you do the Njcat to make sure that when you do the assessment, that you understand that that assessment drives the budget, okay? We have families that come in, and when they do their Njcat assessment, sometimes they're like, oh, well, I don't want to share this information because I don't think that we could find providers that be able to support our child. So they're either not forthcoming or don't give all the information. When it's quite the opposite, there's not too much that anyone that's worked in DDD has not seen, and if you accurately complete the Njcat with all of the challenging behaviors, with all of the different needs that a person may have, then you have the budget to support those needs. Because I think there was once or twice when I'm looking at the paper, looking at the person, I'm like, this is not the same person, and we couldn't get the supports in place until we redid the Njcat, okay? We're good so far? Okay, good. Now, step 4, this is what everybody really wants to know. What is the budget, okay? So before we go into the budget, and sometimes things can be very confusing within DDD, so I try to break them down as simply as I can, okay? So when you apply for DDD, DDD has 2 programs. One program is called the supports program, okay? The second program is called the community care program. Very loosely speaking, not exactly. The way that you know about the supports program is the supports program is typically for individuals, typically, that live at home and receive supports at home, okay? The way you think about the community care waiver program is it's typically for people who may want to live in a residential setting, like a group home or supervised apartment, and the CCP, Community Care Program, provides additional funding for the person to have residential supports, okay? 90 to 100% of the people come in under the support program. If you're working with a support coordinator is similar to a case manager, in which we're going to talk about. A good support coordinator would tell you, put your name on the list for CCP as soon as you're eligible for services, because the wait list can be upwards of 7 to 10 years, okay? This conversation is very, very touchy. Sometimes we don't want to talk about these things. We don't want to think about what's going to happen. And I understand. I have a son with special needs. He's in his 30s. I have a 28-year-old who just told me she's expecting. Yay! Well, we're not sure, but okay. You know. So the difficult conversations are some things that families may or may not want to have. What's going to happen once I'm not here? You know, do I want my son to go in a group home? Who's going to support him? The 28-year-old, guess what? You just inherited. Here you go. And what's so interesting about it is she would be okay with it. But what happens when she gets married? Is the husband going to be okay? What happens when she has her own family? So what do you do with these situations? So these are just different personal conversations to have. But at least if you apply for the CCP, you have that option for residential services. It doesn't mean that a person is going to the group home, like the state is not going to show up and take people away. It doesn't really happen like that. But you have the funding, and people can actually receive 24-hour supports in their own home. So if you're working with someone, just apply for the CCP. Okay, so there's 2 different programs through DDD. The supports program, and then the CCP. Now the budgets for the support program. Remember when I spoke about the tiers, A through E? Someone who has a tier A, and this is across the board, they would have $23,000 a year. Someone with a tier E would have $71,000 per year. So you see how the funding changes depending on your tier. That's why it's important to complete the Njcat accurately, okay? Do you notice there's a small a by the letter? A stands for the Acuity Factor. Remember, that's like extra funding but clinical level of need. So someone with a tier A could get 23,000, but if they're A with an acuity, then they get 30,000. Same thing, E, 7193, okay? Now this is the supports program budget, which most people that get approved for DDD services go under the supports program budget. Now, this is the CCP budget, okay? The budget that has funding for residential services. Someone on a tier A on the CCP will get 54, and an A with an acuity will get 91. So if you do the comparison from someone with a tier A from 23, it goes up significantly to 54, okay? So those are the different budgets that once you're assigned a tier, you will have to work with.
So is that a year, is that a yearly budget?
Good question,
Okay.
because I was getting ready to forget that. Yes, you have a budget from year to year.
Okay.
So if it starts on January 1st, it goes again through January 31st. If you don't use all of the money in your budget, it goes back to the state, but it does not affect your budget for the next year. Your tier will always stay the same until you redo the Njcat to change your tier, okay?
Okay. I wanted to know that, I'm hoping I'm clear, I'm getting this right. You said that based on the assessment, A, B, C, D, or E with acuities, depending on that assessment, based on that assessment, A through E, a person could possibly, based on the assessment, let's say the world shuts down again and they're like 26 or something. It's a possibility based on that assessment. They could get 24-hour support in the home if the other programs are closed. I'm just saying. Is that what you're saying?
Kind of, yes. So, yes and no. If it fits in the budget and it's approved service and it works out, yes. I can tell you, someone with a community care budget, if they're getting $458,000 a year, I'm pretty sure they could afford 24-hour staffing. But someone in the supports program for $93,000, it's very unlikely that, or even $71,000, it's very likely that you will be eligible for 24-hour staffing. We're going to talk about the different services that could actually go into the plan, and then how you could use those services as well.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so step 4, we have step 1 is what step 1? Step 2?
Apply for DDD.
Good. Step 3? Good. Now we're on step 4, okay? So when you get to step 4, you're pretty much qualified for services. You have your tier, you know your budget, you know all of the different basic things that you need for DDD. Now what you need to do is choose what's called a support coordination agency, okay? A support coordination agency supplies support coordinators, which is the newer way of saying a case manager, okay? So you need to choose your support coordination agency. It's important to know, and I think we spoke about this. If you don't choose a support coordination agency, one will be automatically assigned and selected for you, which is not like the worst thing in the world, okay? Okay, so we did the step review. So what actually is a support coordination agency? A support coordination agency is an organization qualified by DDD to assist individuals gain services and supports that they need, okay? A support coordination agency employs support coordinators, which again is the same thing as a case manager in the old days. The support coordinator helps identify a person's needs. They help develop a plan, and the type of plan that DDD uses is called an ISP, Individualized Service Plan, very similar to the IEP that some of you may be familiar with. They help you locate services. I know that we've been talking about services, And they also help you monitor supports, and they also help you respond to emergencies, okay? Oh, and at Equal Opportunity Support Services, we are accepting new families or individuals who are aging into DDD services and are looking for a support coordinator. Just to let you know, we do provide those services, support coordination. Okay, so how do you actually choose a support coordination agency? The first thing you want to do is just basically ask yourself, like, what is important to your child? The people that they associate with, the places that they go, what type of interests do they have, and that's just a good place to get started by just kind of having an understanding of your child. Some other things you also want to ask yourself are, what supports do you think your child may need as an adult? Are there safety concerns in the home? As you were mentioning earlier, if someone needs 24-hour support, there's probably some type of safety need there. Is there health things that need to be addressed? Finances, behaviors, their daily living, transportation, community inclusion, meaning connected to the community, as well as wellness. These are some things you may want to consider when thinking about what your child needs as an adult. Now, what do you actually want from a support coordination agency? You want an agency that recognizes what's important to your child. They can identify what your child needs and what they want. And then also someone who's competent enough to put a plan into place to help your family member achieve those goals. The biggest challenge that you may find with support coordination is that support coordinators don't respond. And that's really just kind of unfortunate. We have people that have support coordinators that transfer to us because they'll leave messages for their support coordinator, they don't call back. They may be looking for a service, the support coordinator just doesn't follow up, because sometimes it's just a challenge to balance so much. Some of the bigger agencies that you may be familiar with, they kind of top load the support coordinators where you can have 50 to 60 people on a caseload. So not necessarily at the fault of the support coordinator, but it can be challenging trying to manage so many people with so many different services. So when you're looking for a support coordination agency, they should be able to be responsive, identify what your child needs, and then be able to actively put a plan in place. When you're interviewing and looking for a support coordination agency, one good question to ask, which I just spoke about, is how many people do you actually have on your caseload? Like I said, upwards of 40 to 50 people, you may find that it's hard to manage so many people, and you may find someone who may not be as responsive to your needs. What is your turnover rate? Unfortunately, the position of support coordinator can have a very high turnover rate. Where that comes in is we have families who, I don't know if you've ever started the process for something that may be lengthy, and then you go to speak to the person, they're no longer there, and you feel like you have to start the process all over. So different things like environmental modifications, vehicle modifications, you just want to make sure that the person has been employed for a long time, so that way you have a consistent care. How do you match people with support coordinators? Some people, I mean, nowadays everything is kind of, computerized, but sometimes it's a good practice to have a support coordinator that's assigned to your county or in your area, because they know the programs, they know the different supports in your area. So ask them the criteria for assigning support coordinators, because that may be something that's really important. How long have you provided services? Now, I spoke about earlier how to find the DDD agency list. You literally can Google it, New Jersey Support Coordination List of Agencies. Right now, I think they're up to close to 200 agencies. And what will typically happen is, once you complete the intake process, they'll hand you a list and say, pick one. So it's kind of like, well, how exactly do I pick one? If you look on the DDD website, they'll list all the agencies, but they'll also list information about the agencies, how long they've been providing support coordination, whether they're approved or not approved. And some that can, for some people that's important. An agency that is approved means that they're able to approve their own plans. So once they develop the ISP, a supervisor can go in, choose the plan, and say go. Some agencies that do not approve their own plans, they have to send it out to the state reviews it, they get it back, and then you're ready to go. Either way, both ways, hopefully, will produce a quality plan. The difference is for a support coordination agency that may not be self-approving is that it may take a little bit of time. So we had a family one time that their job called them and said, hey, guess what, we're opening up, you have to start work on Monday. For an agency that's approving, they could go in, enter a day program, service into the plan, start it right away. Agency that's not self-approving, it may take a little bit more time to get a service started. However, again, it doesn't really affect the services that a person has. Agencies that have been in business for a very long time, sometimes you know how they do things the old school way, so that can be a plus or a drawback. And for newer agencies, they're usually more proficient with the newer things that's out there, the different services, so on and so forth. So it's really just a personal preference on, what you would choose.
Now, support coordination is a relatively new phenomenon, is it not?
Abs-
Because I've been at the high school, I don't know, 10 years now,
Mhm.
I guess, or so, something like that, and it had just come into fruition when I was there.
Yeah.
So, prior to that, DDD handled all their own services, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And not to get technical, but what it was is, in the old school world, services were program funded, meaning that, let's say you wanted to go into a group home, the group home would get a big old check to support you for the whole entire year, and you're good to go. Now, they moved to a model what's called fee for service, so that means that the provider actually only gets paid after the service is delivered. So that presents its own challenges if someone wants to go home or someone is looking for a service. So there's just, like you said, it's good for the providers the old-fashioned way. However, what DDD essentially did was took away the, like the ownership from the providers, and they gave it to you as parents and family members. So you have the choice. You don't like what a provider does in the old system. You wanted to get a day program, you had to go online, you had to wait, and so now you don't like the agency, you control your funding, and you say, I choose not to have this program, and I can get up and take my money someplace else. So that's the difference, is they took the control away from the programs and they put it in the parents' hands, okay? So that was a good point about the support coordination agency.
I didn't want these guys to call and they say, oh, we only been doing this for 5 years, when that actually might be somebody that got started from the beginning.
Exactly. It's only 10 years. I think it's been about 10 years.
Has it? Okay.
Exactly. How does the agency respond to your needs? Not only, like for example, our agency, we talk to parents in the evening, we talk to parents on the weekends, because we know everything doesn't fit in from a 9 to 5. If you have an emergency and you need something answered, will the person be there to help you? That's very important. One kind of clue that I try to tell the families is when you're interviewing support coordination agencies, the way that they respond to you in the beginning is a good indication of how they're going to respond to you in the future. You call them, and then 2 weeks later you get a phone call. They're like, you left us a message 2 weeks ago? Or you have agencies that pick up right away, they respond. That's typically the way that you will see that they do business. So pay attention to that when you're interviewing agencies in the beginning. Okay, so I want to do a quick check-in, okay? Because sometimes it's a lot of information. Questions?
I have a question. You said the budget is yearly.
Yes, annual.
So, say January 1st is my beginning of my budget for the year, and next January
Excellent. It's very easy to switch. I think in the packet, there's a form called the agency selection form. I'm sorry. I sanitized my hands and everything before we came. Keep going. The agency selection form?
Like the third page.
Okay. Here it goes. I'm sorry, I don't mean to get so close. So this form right here, this is called the agency selection form. Okay? You see it? This is the agency selection form. You see it?
Yeah.
This is the form when you're ready to choose support coordination agencies. Hello. This is the form that you would choose. Now, if for some reason you're ever not happy with your support coordination agency, you literally can switch at any time. You just fill out the form. Forms are available. The new agency coming in will be very happy to send you a copy of the form. The only thing is, DDD has a preference to switch on the first of the month. So if you decide to switch agencies, the last few days of the month is the best time to decide to switch. If not, you'll wait another month. But it's really not difficult. You fill out the form, no questions asked, and then you're done. Any other questions? We're good? Okay, good.
One thing I did, I'm sorry if you've interrupted.
No, you're fine.
One of the things that I heard about the Njcat when you're filling it out, because a lot of times, like, I don't think everybody realizes how much support sometimes you're giving your child at home.
Yes.
You have to really think about, could they take a shower unless I messed with the temperature? Can they pick their own clothes? Do you know what I mean? So you have to really like read the question and then look at how much support you're giving them.
Absolutely.
And could they do this without me?
Absolutely.
So, and I think that's where you were talking about the tier. So, I don't want to say this in front of you, although you're the one that's getting them help. Try to make them look as disabled as possible, and your monies are better, right? So.
See, I could never say that, but there you go.
And that's usually what we suggest or recommend is like
That's the truth.
really look at
Yeah.
their whole day. Can they get their own meal? Could they get their own sandwich? And not you setting it up and having them pop it in a microwave or something like that, but really look at all the steps in the process.
And also, so the way that the Njcat takes place, you're going to have an assessor call you on the phone and walk you through the questions. On DDG's website, there is a sample Njcat, and what we do is we send that out to new families, so that way you know ahead of time, let's think about this. So let's say, we use the example of feeding. Do you have to cook? Can a child eat on their own? Maybe. But did you cook? Did you prepare the meal? Do you have to cut it up? Make sure they're swallowing. All of those different things over the course of the time where they're waiting for the assessment, we tell them to jot that down. So the day of their assessment, then you already have all your answers so you don't forget everything, because there's always a lot going on, during those times. Okay?
So some of our students are semi-independent.
Mhm.
If the family doesn't want a group home, do they support them in an apartment? Like, are there apartments for people with disabilities that just need a little bit of check-in?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. So what happened is, in the field of disabilities, and this is a long. Did anybody ever see the expose, and this will kind of give away my age, with Geraldo Rivera when he went into the developmental center? Don't watch it, it'll break your heart. But we actually used to show it as part of our orientation, so people understood that people with developmental and intellectual disabilities, back in the days, a nurse would come in, hey, I'm sorry to have to tell you, let's take the baby and put it in an institution or something. Absolutely horrible conditions. And Geraldo, he did an expose. So nowadays, they have so many different options that encourage independence, individualized living. They actually, there was a mandate for New Jersey to close down all of the developmental institutions and then also start to integrate people into society, because could you imagine if all of us here were sent to live in one house together? I don't know if we would all get along or not. We have different personalities, we have different wants, and people with intellectual and developmental disabilities were not given choices. That we weren't given choices on where to live. They're not given choices with who's their roommate and they have to share with. So DDD moved away from that, and they're actually going to smaller, more individualized settings. They actually don't even want to go towards group homes. Group homes financially for agencies work out, but they support and love smaller, like 2-person, individualized settings in a community, in apartments, and so on and so forth. DDD has a voucher system that even if you wanted to live on your own, they support you with a portion of the rent that you would have to pay to enable you to be able to live where you want to live. So don't automatically think group home. There's so many different living arrangements that a person can have support from with DDD. Okay, so when you think about the agencies, which agencies make you feel the most comfortable, which agency shares your beliefs, which agency understands your child's disability, which seems responsive, which seems to have the skills that you're looking for, the knowledge, and dedicated people as well. Those are typically the things that you're looking for when you're looking for a support coordination agency. The agency selection form we spoke about. At the top of the form, there's the website, email for you to submit the agency selection form. And then now we're talking a little bit about the timeline, okay? So let's say we have someone who's 20 years old. They're going to graduate next year in June as an example, okay? So if they were starting school this year, we did the step review. If they were starting school this year, in September, what you want to do is exactly what you're doing today. Get information, get knowledge, attend seminars, go to disability expos, get training. There's something called the PCPT. You can look it up online, and then you have access to that. Start looking into care management anywhere between September and June of the last year in high school. And this is if you've waited. This is like the, okay, well, we need to get into gear kind of timeline. So these are the things in September to June. In between February and, June, between February and March, that's when you start interviewing for support coordination agencies. So, for example, the individuals who have started their DDD application last year or within the last couple of months, this is high time. Like every day we're getting assignments because they are getting ready for the graduates of this year. If you don't choose a support coordination agency by April of the graduation year, again, DDD will assign a support coordination agency to you. Okay, so some of us, we open up our assignment in April, we're like, oh, okay, good, this is great. Okay, so we spoke about the different steps involved in the application process. We spoke a little bit about support coordination agencies, and one common question that people have is, but how does it work? Like, I don't get it. So all of the budgets that you spoke about earlier, are we gonna get mailed a check for $343,000? We could just go out? I'm like, yeah, it doesn't quite work like that, okay? So what happens is remember, that's why I said a support coordination agency is very important, okay? The first thing is we spoke about the budget being assigned, okay? The budget that you're assigned is actually managed by your support coordinator. There's a system called iRecord, and in iRecord it has all your DDD information, your medical information, everything, but it also maintains your budget dollars as well. So anytime you want to access a service, and we're still going to talk about the different services that are in DDD, the steps would be is, let's say I want to go for occupational therapy. You have to call your support coordinator, and what your support coordinator is supposed to do is either provide you with a list or information or a direct referral to an occupational therapist or physical therapist. Once you interview those people, you like them, you say, this is the agency that I chose to go with. Once you choose the agency, you let your support coordinator know. They go into the system, which contains your budget, they enter the service, and then the system automatically deducts the dollars from your budget, okay? So that's how it works, and that's why it's so important to choose a support coordinator that cares, that is knowledgeable, that understands. And one big thing, which is actually quite sad that we find, is people just don't even know what their budgets are. They don't know how much money they have left in the budget. They don't know what services cost. We make sure we educate all of the parents because, again, for myself, even if you were never connected to us, we want educated parents so you are empowered to take care of and advocate for your children, okay? So that choosing a support coordinator is important because they manage your funds, your budget, they connect you to different services so you're not looking, so the time is not clicking and the budget is just going away. So that's part of it, okay? And they also add services as well, okay? Now there is one service because again, you don't get a check for $353,000. So families are like, well, you know, do we have access to any portion of the budget? Now, I don't know if I told some of you guys, I went to Pittsgrove yesterday, and I asked the families at Pittsgrove if they've ever seen the commercial, and they said no. I'm like, they don't run this commercial in Pittsgrove, but I'm gonna ask you guys, and I'm pretty confident you've seen it. Have you ever seen a commercial where they say when dad, she's a support staff, she gets paid for taking care of her dad. And she's like, when I walk in the room, dad's face just lights up.
What?
I've seen a commercial, well, I don't know if it's that exactly.
It
But
is.
It's like a home health aid.
Yes. Okay. Good. So they show that in this town. All right. Good. I just wanted to check. Okay. So what happens is the way that you can actually utilize some of the budget is you can work as a staff, a support staff for your child. Okay. Or you can hire someone in your family, someone you know, a friend or family member to work as a support staff for the child. Just to let you know, they have to be drug tested. I'm just letting everyone know. Okay? Because there's a whole surrounding, because they will look in your face. No. I'm like, yes. Okay? The whole marijuana thing, that changed a whole lot of things and all this other stuff. So the person has to be drug tested, and it's optional if you want to do a background check. What I suggest is people that you don't know, if you want to hire someone, you're not too sure, it doesn't hurt, it's free to do a background check, okay? So when you think about that, because I couldn't believe we have a family member and the person's budget is $353,000 a year and $667. Not that I stare at that all the time or anything, okay? And the family member gets paid to take care of her own son that lives with her. I'm like, congratulations. Wow. Wrong field. But if you think about it in theory, okay, the way that we understand is if the person was living in a support situation like a hospital institution, it would cost 4 times as much. So even though the family, which is doing a good job, you get the personal support, they know the person, it's less of a financial responsibility from the state. That's what we understand, okay? So that's the way, if you did want to access the budget, that you could actually access the budget because you're doing the work anyway, okay? All right, good. Any questions? All right, we're almost there. Okay, so after you assign a support coordinator, then between May and June, close to the graduation date, the ISP is beginning to get developed, okay? Just to answer the question, if a student is still in school because there's a whole ST5 extended year, what is it, ST, I don't know, I used to know the code, okay. Impress code, okay, see? That's a good person to have in your corner, okay? But basically, if the school year is extended, can a person still receive DDD services? Yes, if they're in school. The key is they must be 21. And we also cannot replicate the services that a student is receiving. So if you're getting OT or PT in school, you cannot use your DDD budget to get OT and PT. Other than that, you're okay, okay? Now, different services that can be accessed or put in the budget is assistive technology. DDD won't pay for a computer, a laptop, or a cell phone, but they will pay for the technology to adapt the equipment to a person's needs, okay? Physical therapy, everyone's familiar with physical therapy. Pre-vocational training for individuals who may be looking for work. DDD pays for that. Respite care. Respite care is an excellent service. A respite care can be temporary, where someone goes to visit, or you can have staff come to your home and stay at your home for a week while you go away on vacation, or you can have your family member go to an agency to stay. Some agencies provide hotel respite, and it just basically gives the family a break from the person. Not only just because you need a break, but let's say, God forbid, you're having a surgery and you don't have anyone in the home, you need someone to care for them. You can get someone to come in the home, temporarily care for the person, or have them go with a family member or someone to get paid to care for them for a short period of time. Supportive employment, that involves work as well. Transportation, DDD now pays for Uber and for Lyft. In New Jersey, I'm from New York, but in New Jersey there's a big challenge with trying to get around to different places. Uber, Lyft, and private transportation is available for DDD through your DDD budget. Support brokerage is very similar to support coordination. I've never seen anybody really use it, but support brokerage is for if you want to use your budget to hire a staff, they have a support broker that will actually help you put ads in the newspaper, interview staff, troubleshoot like a supervisor of the program. Goods and services. Goods and services is one of those fun things that DDD provides. Goods and services can be used for services that are not specifically geared at people that have special needs, okay? Different programs like the YMCA. We have a lot of individuals that go horseback riding. We have an individual that takes archery. We have an individual that takes swimming lessons. So all of the different things that you want to do that are not traditional services, as long as the provider is willing to take DDD as a payment, then you can access all services throughout the community. They don't just have to be Medicaid approved DDD services. Behavioral supports, some of us are familiar with that, having a BCBA or someone come to the home to help out. Day habilitation, those are different day programs that a person goes to. And think about it, you have someone who's turning 21. They've been engaged, occupied for a big part of the day. Guess what? What are they gonna do all day? Because mom and or dad have to go to work. Day habilitation could be an option. Community-based support is the one that we just spoke about. Environmental modifications for the home. We actually have one of our members reach out because she's having difficulty with getting her daughter into the shower. So DDD will pay to have the home modified if necessary. Vehicle modifications as well, and speech, language, and hearing therapy. Okay. Now, there were questions regarding guardianship, okay? Now, there's an agency called the Community Help Law Project. And we actually have, okay, let me talk about the Community Help Law Project. Now, guardianship, just like everything else, is a personal decision. From what we understand, guardianship can be very expensive. It can be because you need lawyers and all kind of things related to guardianship. It can be very cumbersome to navigate as well. Now, once a person is 21, accepted for DDG services, the Community Help Law Project actually provides these services for free, or there's minimal cost, like $50 or something like that, okay? They help with not only guardianship, issues regarding Social Security, welfare issues, food stamps, Medicaid, and a whole list of things that are going on here. They are, have other offices besides Essex and Union. The thing is that, again, it's a personal choice. Some people don't want to wait until the person turns 21, because guess what happened when we went to the IEP meeting last week? The student said, I'm not going to school anymore, Mom. I'm an adult. And the parents, they don't have the authority to guide the person. So it really is a personal decision on, what you want to pursue, if you want to pursue guardianship. But the option is, if you do want to wait, you can actually receive help with guardianship services at, honestly, minimal cost. Now, we do have a person, and I asked her for her information, we do have a person that walks you through the guardianship process, and I think she has a very nominal fee. If you reach out to Jessica, I'll send the information to her, and then I'll give you the person's name to help with, and she'll walk you step by step through guardianship. But there's a fee involved, but it's nominal. We don't endorse, and we don't recommend any specific agency. We just share the information, okay? So that's what we basically talk about for guardianship. Another entity that helps out with issues with Social Security, they do touch a little bit on guardianship as well. They help with housing issues, being sued, any type of legal issues. It's an agency called the Volunteer Lawyers for Justice, okay? This is a group of people that have taken the either bar, they're becoming lawyers. So what happens is they have to do a certain amount of cases at no cost in order to fulfill their requirement. So the Volunteers for Justice, you do not have to wait for the person to be qualified for DDD services. You can actually reach out to them now and seek assistance. And they've been amazing. We've had two people, one person that was having issues with Social Security, a denial. They did amazing work with her. And the other person was having issues with Social Security as well, and they were able to assist. So if you have questions about guardianship or anything, call the number and they'll direct you to the agency that can assist you with guardianship and any type of legal information or questions you have, Medicaid and all of that. Okay.
Is this when they turn 21, or is this prior, or?
This, you don't have to be 21.
Okay.
That's why we share this information. The Community Help Law Project, secretly, I've referred people over, and they kind of still help people. I'm like, just call them, just don't, just go. And they actually still help people that aren't even qualified for DDD services. But technically, you're supposed to be qualified for DDD services. And the reason why we bring this up is to let people know that if you're struggling with guardianship, financially or whatever else, if you have the option to wait, we're not endorsing, encouraging, or promoting, we're just letting you know if you have the option to wait, this service is available through DDD for no cost to help you with guardianship if you could wait. Now, if you can't wait, then the young lady, I'm going to share her information. Her name is Sarah Sanchez with Jessica. She has a program where she helps people with guardianship papers and filing and getting lawyers and all this stuff. She charges a fee for it, but again, I think it's like $200 to $300 depending on your personal situation. But I'll let Jessica know, and if that's what you want to pursue, you can. You do not have to wait for the person to turn 21. For this program either, you do not have to wait for the person to turn 21 and be approved for DD services. You can access them right now if you wanted to. we had a family member that called, and I was like, why are you putting us in this predicament? They wanted to fight the school and fight. I was like, here, just call. We can't help you out. Just call. I don't know what else to tell you. I'm sorry. But no, but you know what? You know what it was? It was that she wanted to fight everything and everybody. She wanted to fight DDD on why she had to complete the Njcat. I'm like, oh, call this number, call these people, and ask these people that question. I can't help you. I'm sorry. I don't. Everybody has to do it. I don't have to. I said, okay, that's fine. So that's our go-to. All right.
I'm wondering too if maybe they have some sort of relationship with Rutgers, because our Rutgers Camden campus has a pretty decent law school there.
Really?
Yes, I'm wondering if that would funnel our parents to them, because if they need those hours, perhaps that might be a good avenue.
Absolutely.
If I have some time, I'll try to call them and see.
Absolutely. Okay, so hopefully, you have a question?
Yeah, I do. With what you were just saying, the agency that you could go through, yeah, for guardianship and stuff, do they also do for power of attorney, like medically wise and everything?
Any legal matter that you
Yeah.
need assistance with, the lawyers for volunteers for lawyer, you contact them, and they usually have someone that can assign and take that case. They help with pretty much any kind of legal matter that you have going on. They're pretty good.
Yeah, because like with him, he's not very socially apt. Like when it comes to like medical stuff and stuff, he looks at me like a deer in headlights. Like, what am I supposed to say? And I'm always there, and I'm like, Doc, he doesn't understand.
No,
I'm like, you just flew the coop right over his head.
I hear you. My son, he will not say a word. He won't talk or anything. You sit him in the dentist chair, he knows all his rights. I'm like, where did you get this from? I know my mom can't make you do surgery on my teeth. Really? Okay, that's fine. So I get it and I understand. And
Yeah.
specifically, even if you didn't want guardianship for certain type of medical needs and all those different things, have attorney, there's partial guardianship.
Yeah.
They help with all of that.
Okay,
Okay?
good to know.
Thank you. All right, so lastly, okay,
I just was wondering,
sure.
once my daughter is DDD eligible
Eligible.
and she gets the assessment budget,
Mm-hmm.
and she applies for any of these additional programs,
Services.
community help,
Law
law,
projects.
I'm sorry, my glasses aren't
No,
on.
you're fine.
Law projects,
Uh-huh.
and she applies for, let's say, food stamps at 21. Will her budget get lowered?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
DDD is its own, that's a really good question. DDD is its own separate entity. It does not affect Social Security. It does not affect other different programs. You know, it doesn't affect, because remember, the actual budget for DDD isn't monetary, you know, it's not money in your hands. It's a budget to use to connect you to the services that you need, with the exception of if you're using community-based supports or you're getting paid. So again, I mean, I love the families that we work with because they keep you on your toes. You're like, really? So there was a family that was getting divorced, and the husband looked online and he saw that DDD has all of these budgets. So he went to modify his child support and said that the mom was getting $70-something thousand a year through DDD, you know, so why does he have to pay for child support? So, you know, I mean, they asked us to explain it. I'm like, we could explain it, you know, but it's not actual dollars that you're getting. It's funding that you get to access services that you may need, okay? And also, it's connections, like we spoke about the supportive housing program or the community health law project. DDD has extended programs that are beneficial and helps a person that is in need, because remember, most of them are supposed to be adults and they experience adult problems just like us, and some of them, because of the Social Security, all of those different things, don't have the funding, so there are programs out there to help.
Wow. Okay, great.
Okay? All right, so hopefully with all the information that we've spoken about today, you feel a little bit more knowledgeable about how to apply for DDD services, and you have a recipe for success. Okay? So are there any questions? And I'm sorry, I wasn't even watching the time. I have no idea. Are we good with time?
I think the importance is more important, or the information you're
Okay.
giving is way more important than the time.
Okay, good. Any questions?
I'm sorry,
No,
I
you're
looked in at the, you know, it's a little late.
Mm-hmm.
When you, step one, do you have to get approved for Medicaid to move on to apply? Okay.
Now, technically, yes, because what'll happen is in order for you to get approved for DDD services, you have to have Medicaid. However, you don't have to be approved for Medicaid to apply for DDD services. Does that make sense? Because what's gonna happen is I fill out the application for Medicaid. Medicaid usually makes a decision within 45 days. I fill out the application for DDD. DDD works at its own pace. It could take 3 months, 6 months. Age may be a factor. So what happens is, realistically, if you submit the application for Medicaid on January 1st and you apply for DDD on January 1st, you're going to get approved for Medicaid way before you get approved for DDD. So that's why I say, and DDD will ask you, are you approved for Medicaid? If you say no, they'll ask you, have you started the process? Yes, and they'll keep going on, but they will not move forward until you get that final approval.
Is there ever a time when you're not approved for Medicaid? For example, her health insurance right now, she's pretty much gonna be covered until she's 26.
Okay.
Will Medicaid say, oh, no way?
I haven't heard of that, but more recently, again, our wonderful families it was a situation, I'm sorry, I wish I could reference it, whereas it was something with the Medicaid and the personal insurance and so on and so forth. So I'm not sure. I would definitely reach out to that Medicaid eligibility desk, and then that's a perfect question to ask them regarding, because I haven't heard of anyone being denied. Some people have co-insurance and multiple insurances. I'm not an insurance expert, so I don't want to steer you wrong, but that's the perfect question. And interestingly enough, everyone's situation is different. So even if it happened this way in this situation, it would be totally different in another situation. So that Medicaid eligibility help desk, perfect place to go to ask insurance questions.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Do you have any other questions? Sure.
With the Medicaid,
Medicaid.
because he's already underneath with me, and I'm the primary,
Mhm.
can I get him switched over to his own primary through them, or do I have to still fill out the application?
Okay. That I would probably run to Medicaid eligibility, because what I actually found out is there's 2 different Medicaid programs. There's a federally funded Medicaid program that's connected to Social Security, and if you're not eligible, like let's say you're on Social Security, something happens, you lose your benefits, then you could apply for the county level Medicaid, which will then kick in. So when it comes to DDD eligibility and having to get Medicaid eligibility, as well as if you're jeopardized of losing it, there's a whole team of people that understand all the intricacies related to insurance that will step in and intervene. They'll contact us as support coordinators saying, hey, we were alerted by Social Security, there's an issue, let's get working on this. And then they walk us through the steps of what we need to do to help the person. So in your, with your situation, it might be very unique. That Medicaid eligibility help desk, excellent, and they'll answer all your questions about that.
Well, the other thing is, he doesn't have Social Security yet. I haven't applied for that for him yet.
Okay.
And, I mean, I know with him medically and financially, I'll probably have to get power of attorney over him.
Okay.
Because he's probably not gonna understand any of that life. And what my other question would be is, with the Social Security, would it be underneath his name, or would I be the directive and then him?
Okay, so I don't want to steer you wrong, but he should be able to have his own Social Security account,
Okay.
and you could still maintain rep payee. But for Social Security, I would definitely ask questions about that.
Yeah.
And Social Security also, just so you know, because what happens is parents sign up, they're like, oh great, I could get paid $350,000 a year to take care of my kid, and then guess what happens to change their mind? Guess who alerts them, and that comes, not literally knocking on the door, but guess who alerts them? Who? The one we all fear. IRS was like, hey, guess what?
Wow.
Yeah.
You haven't paid your taxes on this.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
different things you want to make sure, because any income that you receive, it could affect the different programs. Your DDD budget is never affected by your income. Now, your Medicaid could be affected. In order to be, loosely speaking, in order to be eligible for Medicaid, you can only have a certain amount of assets. You can only have a certain amount in your bank account. So if you lose Medicaid eligibility, it will jeopardize your DDD budget. But whatever you do, it won't jeopardize your budget. Okay? Any other final questions?
But if they're 8 or older and they're adults now, wouldn't that be under them?
But the
Not
Social
what-
Security,
Not under what I make?
wait, for Social Security or income?
For what you were talking about.
For the family?
Yeah.
Yes, that was just the family. That had nothing to do with the person. I was speaking about the family member that was getting paid.
Oh, okay.
Everyone's calling us like, hey, Monique, there's a whole bunch of taxes that are due. I'm like, yeah, you increase your income like 170%. IRS will know everything. So
Yeah.
that's just something, okay?
Do you think there's gonna be some leeway due to the fact that we have had COVID? Because with Social Security, she's still not in place because of COVID. This office in Cherry Hill has been closed, and I've been trying to deal with the main Social Security office, and they always say call the Cherry Hill office.
And no one
I'm on hold
answers.
for 30 minutes. I get disconnected. When I finally talk to someone, they say, well, the office is closed.
Yeah.
You know, there's no appointment, so like with this stuff, she's not even on Medicaid. So,
And, okay, so Volunteers for Justice, they would be a good asset. Now, again, we don't recommend or endorse any other agency. However, someone really, and I was very surprised, had success with Bender and Bender, the commercial. Wait, they do show Bender and Bender in this town, right? Okay, I'm just checking, you know. I'm just checking, okay. So the Bender and Bender commercial, someone called and they actually did help them get Social Security. They didn't charge the family money. Of course, they took a portion of the Social Security. So let's say if her application was in 2 years ago, Social Security goes back to the date of disability or the application process. So whatever money you were due, they take their cut, but the family member was, they were ecstatic. They were very happy. And I would never really think of that option because I think of more like people that, well, no, Social Security is for people with disability, but I don't know, I just never would have thought about calling Bender and Bender because I think of, it's so expensive.
Right.
But the family called them, they said they were wonderful. I was like, wow. That we don't endorse, but that's an option. I'm just saying, because you know, you go to Bender and Bender, and you're like, Monique, I got a bill for $20,000. I'm like, we don't, but the family had a wonderful experience as a last option, maybe. Because there are paid lawyers that help you with Social Security.
Yeah.
So that's always an option, but we want to have the resources out there where you're not, hopefully, coming out your pocket for it. But you can go pay any lawyer and they'll get it all together. Okay? Any final questions? We're good to go? Okay, well, thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you.
Contact us with any questions. You're welcome. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you.